1960s was a weird time for horror movies. Although old-school B-movies remained popular throughout the decade, there was a distinct undercurrent of darker, more visceral films coming from outside Hollywood. The 60s gave us some beloved horror classics and more than a few notable schlockfests, but most movies fall somewhere in between. Spider Baby is one of the many horror movies caught in this limbo. Not quite forgotten, but not widely recognized as a classic either. The handful of critics who've seen it are fairly positive, though, and with a title like Spider Baby, I'm at least a little curious what it's about. Let's see... pre-human savagery and cannibalism. Sounds pretty nasty, especially from 1967. Let's see what horrors await.
You bet.
Sit round a fire with this cup of brew, a fiend and a werewolf on each side of you. This cannibal orgy is strange to behold, and the maddest story ever told.
That's not quite what I expected. Cannibalism aside, this looks closer to the Munsters than the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'm beginning to think this is just gonna be a silly romp about a weird family with a little sweet David Lynch that has a severed human ear. I'm just a few minutes in and Spider Baby has already pulled the rug out from under me twice.
You can sit down now, Ralph.
At this point, it's safe to assume it's rugs all the way down. This movie actively resists categorization. It could pass for a screwball comedy, if for the brutal murders and talk of incest and cannibalism. Was it a throwback to classic Hollywood horror like the Universal Munsters? Or a preview of the next exploitation films just over the horizon? Let's look at the cast. Spider Baby features one of the first roles of exploitation star Sid Haig.
What's the matter, kid? Don't you like clowns?
It also stars Lon Chaney Jr., the Wolfman himself, in one of his final roles. For a horror fan, it's like watching the changing of the guard. This movie features a solid ensemble cast, but Chaney provides the human anchor point for the whole story.
Bruno, Virginia hurt somebody real bad. You ought to hate her.
Elizabeth, how many times have I told you it's not nice to hate?
He really sells the tragedy of his character Bruno. A loyal servant watching the children he raised devolve into monsters. Despite someone being mutilated in the first scene, my comparison to the Munsters was pretty accurate. The main plot about an eccentric family dealing with greedy relatives could have been ripped straight out of a sitcom.
They want to become your legal guardians. As the only other known surviving heirs of the estate of Titus W. Murray.
At the start of the film, Bruno finds out that the children in his care are to be adopted by distant relatives.
Today's the 14th. Oh, now, children, we've got to keep some secrets today.
Not only does he have a body to dispose of, he's got to keep 3 deranged children under control and make a good impression on a couple of strangers. Unbeknownst to him, the relatives are solely interested in claiming the family estate for themselves.
Now wait just a minute. This was not my idea. I've never heard of the Murray family. What is that?
There are cousins, darling. It behooves us to meet them.
All right.
Here come the greedy relatives.
I just don't think it's, just right to go barging in on somebody that you're about to sue.
Well,
Just remember,
Emily
we're
is
trying
greedy.
to avoid that expense.
Peter is more of a charming doofus.
Really, Emily?
I love how this shot tells you everything you need to know about her solely from her reckless driving. And I'd argue it holds up better than most driving scenes from this era of filmmaking. And And here's the relative's lawyer, looking like a doughy Nazi. I know, I instantly wanted him dead too.
Mr. Schlocker, I think he means that you open the window to the inside.
Yes. What's going on here? Why have we stopped?
They're blasting up ahead, sir.
They're what?
Blasting, sir, for the new highway.
Usually horror movies from the 60s are funny for the wrong reasons, but Spider Baby is a genuinely well-executed horror comedy.
Are you a horror film fan, Miss Morse?
Oh, yes, I love it. Dracula, Frankenstein.
And The Mummy?
Oh, the Mummy. I love the Mummy. The way he walks. Step scrape. Step scrape. Oh, and the Wolfman.
There's going to be a full moon tonight.
Cutting straight to Lon Chaney after a mention of the Wolfman? It might not seem like much, but that kind of self-referential humor was a rarity in horror at the time. Spider Baby succeeds in its balance of horror and comedy where many movies of its genre fail.
Oh, yes. But Ralph's allowed to eat anything that he catches.
There's no exact ratio of horror to comedy for filmmakers to follow. Some movies play out like conventional horror with a dash of comedy to lighten the mood. Others simply drop horror tropes into a comedic storyline.
What a lovely singing voice you must have.
Spider Baby darts back and forth between these extremes with impressive dexterity.
Eat spiders.
We have lots of spiders.
The playful tone of the opening credits makes the murder of the delivery man even more shocking. Even when the movie shifts back to comedy, that early instance of violence lingers in our minds.
What?
Comedy, like horror, often has victims. Whether it's a pie in the face or a knife to the throat, we see it coming before they do. Sometimes we laugh at the victims, other times we scream with them.
Hey, what's the spider do now?
The build-up to a punchline is pretty similar to the build-up before a scare. We know something is coming, but we're not quite sure what. We want to know what it is, but not just yet. It's the build-up that makes it work. Spider Baby makes us ask, are they building up to a joke or a scare? The answer is usually both. Spider Baby is a gem that's been overlooked for too long. With its mix of old school horror, throwbacks, and transgressive humor, it's basically the Rocky Horror Picture Show of the 60s.
I'm not much of a man by the light of day, but by night I'm one hell of a lover. I'm just a sweet transvestite.
Just replace the transvestites with vegetarians.
Vegetarians?
It's dead. We don't eat dead things.
It may never rival Rocky Horror's passionate following, but it's come remarkably far considering it was shot in the early 60s and sat on a shelf for a few years before hitting the drive-in circuit. Spider Baby has been fighting obscurity since the very beginning, but it's starting to get the recognition it deserves. So give it a watch.
I like you too.
I promise there's plenty of bonkers stuff in this movie I left for you to discover on your own. This video is the first entry in a series I'm calling One Man's Trash. No matter how bad a movie's reputation is, I'm prepared to give it a shot. Join me on a cinematic dumpster dive as I explore all things underrated, overlooked, and infamous.
Yeah. Spiders aren't supposed to eat other spiders. Cannibal spiders do.